Today, we're diving into a connection that goes back thousands of years. One that might just change how you think about one of the most famous stories ever told. We're looking at how an ancient civilization may have laid the groundwork for a foundational belief. Think about the story of the Great Flood, Noah's Ark, right? It's an absolute cornerstone narrative for millions of people around the globe. But what if I told you that story wasn't the original? To find its source, we have to go way, way back in time, long before the biblical texts we know were ever written down. So, our journey takes us to ancient Mesopotamia, what we now call Iraq. This was the home of the Sumerians. And these guys, they were absolute game changers. I mean, they gave us writing, the wheel, the world's first cities. And as it turns out, they also told some epic stories that would literally echo for millennia. Now, this is where it gets really wild. Take a look at this timeline. The Sumerian flood story, which is part of their famous Epic of Gilgamesh, was written down around 2100 BCE. The book of Genesis, where we find the story of Noah, was put together over 1,000 years later. That's not just a small gap, it's a massive gulf of time. It establishes a pretty clear path for how this story could have been passed down, almost like a cultural inheritance, handed from one civilization to the next.
And nowhere is this influence more obvious or more striking than in the tale of a world-ending flood. Seriously, when you put the two versions side by side, the parallels are just, well, they're impossible to ignore.
Okay, let's start with the warning. In the Sumerian epic, the hero is a guy named Utnapishtim. He gets a secret warning from a sympathetic god that a huge flood is coming to wipe out humanity. Sound familiar? That's because in Genesis, Noah is warned directly by God of the exact same disaster. Both stories kick off with a divine heads-up given to one chosen man.
The similarities get even more specific, unbelievably specific when you look at the instructions for the boat. Utnapishtim is told to build this giant vessel and then waterproof it with pitch and bitumen. Noah gets almost identical instructions. Build a huge ark and seal it with pitch. It's the same survival technology described over a millennium apart.
And what about who gets on board? Well, Utnapishtim saves his family and, get this, the seed of all living things. And Noah, he saves his family and pairs of every single animal. The mission in both stories is exactly the same: preserve life.
But here's the thing. The flood story isn't just some isolated coincidence. It's the biggest, most famous example of a much broader pattern. You can think of it like a series of ancient echoes that just keep reverberating from Sumerian culture into later traditions.
And this influence goes way beyond just the flood. Researchers trace these echoes into other areas too. Things like creation myths where humanity is made from clay, or legal codes that look a whole lot like ancient Sumerian laws. You can see these echoes in religious rituals, and even in some of the core ideas about the relationship between people and the divine.
There's actually an academic term for this whole phenomenon. It's called motif persistence. It's this idea that the core DNA of a story, its ancient skeleton, can be incredibly durable. It can survive for thousands of years, getting passed from one culture to the next, picking up new names and new details, but keeping that original structure completely intact.
So when you start to piece all this evidence together, what you find is this really profound and, as our source material puts it, kind of unsettling connection running through history.
Let's just pause on that phrase for a second. A deeper, unsettling continuity across millennia. What that really suggests is that the past isn't really in the past at all. It's still here, embedded in the stories we tell ourselves, even today.
So the crucial takeaway is this: the remarkable parallels between these Sumerian and Christian narratives, they're really, really difficult to just dismiss as a coincidence. They seem to be ancient echoes, ideas that traveled across empires and centuries to help shape the very foundational stories of the Western world. And why does this matter? Well, it matters because it deepens our understanding of how culture actually works. It shows that our most cherished stories are often part of a much longer, interconnected human conversation, one that stretches all the way back to the very dawn of civilization.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought. If the echoes of ancient Sumer are present in a story as fundamental as the Great Flood, what other ancient echoes are hiding out there in plain sight, continuing to shape our world today?